All right. Okay. Good morning. If whoever's watching this, I'm making this video as sort of a personal documentation of this absolutely wonderful 4chan post I've seen about, as the author claims, why sexuality is fucked, the fall of the original male and the rise of cucked betas. I will just be reading this out, maybe provide my thoughts at the end of this. Let's continue. Hello, dear Paul. I hope you find yourselves having a good day. You might remember Ananan a while ago that posted about his porn addictions and wrote a short text on why porn was probably the main cause that males are so cucked in recent years. At the time, a lot of that came from reading the past NoFap movement's loads of anecdotal evidence and bro science and examining some of its valid points, but alas, I was not satisfied. I will give some context that, according to this guy, he has conducted a very small scale study of about 20 people. And even though he has provided no evidence of that study being true, I think there is bits and pieces of truth in this whole post. Although I do not agree with all of the post, I agree with enough of it that I want to turn this into sort of a documentation for myself to look back on. Regardless, continuing with the post, there was something there, something that wanted to be found. I've gone off and done the actual research, anonymous interviews, recruiting around boards, lots of books in field of sexology, in parentheses, back when psychology was real, and before the field became fetishistic bullshit and tranny justification some odd 40 years ago, and the other heaps of bullshit. Trying to sort the delusion from the actual knowledge, from outright kike lies. If you don't know what kike is, it just is a slur for Jews. This is going to be a quite long. I'll examine the crux of the issue first and then go off examining several rising fetishes and dangers of several kinds of thinking, concluding the suggestions of how you, yes, you, should behave to create the new male, the one that should rise from the swamp of this leftist crap, and by no means is this a defeatist or males get their own way or like go their own way supporting text. I think this issue should be fixed, but it starts with you. If you have any of these issues described in this essay, please seek to improve yourself. Realize it isn't natural to you and seek to stop them. Here we go. Right. So the thing is about this post that I really liked is it's not an incel rage bait post as most of these kinds of posts are. This guy is rooted in the idea of there is a problem and we need to fix it. Although I do think there is some forms of extremism here, you will say, which here you will say where he tries to justify a couple of things, which I don't quite agree with. But if you look past that, there's still a base of truth to be found here, most of which is based around actual critical thinking, I would say. It's better than what we have, I will say. We don't have a lot of content surrounding and examining pornography in the clear cut bullshit way. So I think this video should serve as sort of a baseline for your own thinking rather than adopting this method of thought outright. Anyways, continuing on. He starts by saying, the modern times, the downfall of the masculine thinking and autogenophilia. Autogenophilia, essentially, when you envision yourself being the woman in a sexual relationships, being fucked or whatever. Basically, transgenderism, which is what he is going to argue in this section, that autogenophilia and transgenderism are just the same thing, except one is the harsher or less harsher version of it. Let's see. First of all, let us examine the recent events on the world that have changed how the modern human views sexuality. Not only have family values gone down rather quick, I'd say rather fucking plummeted, but the rise of the fast access internet porn, filled with all kinds of imagery, have also corrupted the youth's natural sexual development. With sex viewed just as a way of release, and said pornography is widely available, the modern teenager, and many of you, I'm sure, was quick to hop on the internet porn bandwagon. Also, in an era where sex became more acceptable to talk about in public and media. Now, many of you could and will confirm, common sense also shows that the first fantasies of the human male and that w- the types of videos he watches are usually simple heterosexual videos of a man and a woman, or a man and several women, with intercourse being dominated by the male. Many even quickly go to fetishes such as forced intercourse, rape, which I kind of disagree with, but continuing on. With domination by their part being the crux of the original male fetish. In accordance to this, with the natural male sexual thought, not that we would just want to go off and rape people. He's just saying like raping is the sexual fantasies we watch, but that doesn't mean we just want to go off and rape people as men, right? But rather that we seek our own pleasure. The usage of our genital organs on women we find attractive to find release. Now, I find this a bit hypocritical because he talks about how we view sex as a way of release in a more condescending tone, and then he proceeds to argue that the human male is designed in a way where we are just looking for that said release. So either the original statement is true and he's just being hypocritical, or the original statement is wrong, in which case he should also be wrong. Regardless, I just described hypocritical two different ways. Anyways, I'm sure I had a better point in mind, but it's early in the morning. Okay. Now, my interviews had a disturbing common point at about this stage. As humans are humans, and excess is the key to change, many of them lost interest and switched to other forms of pornography. The thing that disturbed me is that almost all of them, a staggering 80% of the control group, quite a few dozen, switched to lesbian porn, a porn of women with another woman. Now, many of you will argue that it's natural. A heterosexual man does not want to see penises. Therefore, the many males will simply go off to the pictures of nude women on magazines. Because what's better than one woman, right? Two women. But to explain why this is actually harmful, I have to get into autogenophilia. Don't worry, this eventually comes around and explains all forms of pornography are kind of awful for the brain, not defending that dicks are better than tits here. Autogenophilia, now we are going to the second paragraph. Autogenophilia was a concept introduced in sexuality that was quickly shot down as transphobic, since it implied that men who have a desire to be women develop this delusion as part of this issue. Rather than being born trannies, as lefties imply, that the establishment, or the kaik Jews, if you prefer, denied this. So readily is no fucking coincidence because here lies the crux of the issue. TLDR, if you didn't understand, sexology introduced the concept of autogenophilia, which was stopped because it was transphobic and it was shot down by the establishment, which he, in this case, claims it's the Jews. Although I will say, even though a vast majority of the porn industry is controlled by the Jews, I would be hesitant to believe that they are the ones leading this charge rather than the natural human instincts. There's an argument to be made that they are the ones who are serving these kinds of contents, hence they are the one controlling this. But I would be hard pressed to believe this unless I see hard evidence that points into this direction that yes, they're actively trying to do this and not just relying on algorithms which try to exploit the human mind as much as it can, and the consequences of that just happen to be autogenophilia, transgenderism, rape, blah blah blah. Right? That's the kind of thinking I'm going because Jews love money, and what gets the most money? People. And what gets the most money out of people? The clicks and what they watch. And what gets the most money out of that? Algorithms who try to maximize it. Right. So that's just the connection I just kind of draw. I know there was racism by saying Jews love money, but just look at the statistics. It's true. Most of them even dream about it. Had to change? Okay. He had to change IDs? Not doesn't matter. Autogenophilia describes a mental issue where the man is physically aroused by the thought of projecting himself as the woman during sex. And this has skyrocketed in recent years. The very core of this problem is a brain mismatch over pleasure. Instead of associating his penis and the act of inserting said penis into a woman with pleasure, the man associates parts of the female body with pleasure. While this may seem normal, it means that the man associates sexy and getting off not with his male ejaculation, but with the release and moans of the female. Okay, now this is where we come back to lesbian porn. There is no male at all. At all. And for the man to project himself onto, unlike the pictures where fantasy came from imagining you, yourself, fucking the hot women, there's nowhere for the man to project himself. Watching two women have sex is just that. You're getting off to that. Because your natural male brain finds female parts arousing, but in the background, you're learning, molding your brain to associate their moans and releases with pleasure instead of your own. This is actually a very good refutal to, oh, we have always had porn in the form of magazines. And the idea of, okay, we'll just read into it, but I will just say this is actually a pretty okay explanation for magazines and why they didn't create this sort of porn wave and, mental fatigue mental fatigue pandemic. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. I did not think about this very much. Anyways, now we take a short detour into the culture of sex in media at the time. Before, it was unacceptable to even mention sexual on TV or media. But with feminism and the sexual revolution, it was suddenly fucking okay to talk about dick size or modern television. With this bullshit started the concerns that women were sexually frustrated. I have to disagree a little. I don't think it was exactly feminism that caused this. I think it was the sex culture. I don't think at any point feminism had anything to do with this, not traditional feminism at least. I will argue that modern feminism in some forms is the fight for sexual liberation for women as well, which happens to be one of the goals where we try to normalize more sexual themes. For example, Spain allowing women to go topless on beaches. Now you will say, well, it's just part of their body. They should be allowed to do that. I agree. But here's the thing. There's things that should be allowed to do for a person. And there's also the cultural okay, here's what I was trying to say. Things that should be allowed hypothetically, but that doesn't mean you should do it. I don't think it's I don't think it's morally correct in the sense that you should have the common decency to not do it. Like I could go up to somebody and say, "Hey, your boobs are really huge." I can do it, but that would be a inconsiderate thing to do, or so I've been told. Regardless, like if I go up to somebody and hey, your fucking dick smells, I can smell it. I can do that, but that's not a considered thing to do, even if his dick smells. Right? That's what I'm trying to say here. So I don't blame this on feminism, but rather the cult sexual revolution that happened. All right, continuing with what he was saying about with this bullshit that stated concerns around women were sexually frustrated. There's little evidence for this bullcrap except if you were an abusive husband, referring to the sexual frustration. I'm going to cut this video off here and do the second part because YouTube won't allow me to upload more than 15 minutes of a video. Boohoo.